Good afternoon, everyone. It's Adam from the Eon Foundation. It's a bit early, but we're so happy that even though we have more than 10 minutes before we begin the session, already more than 10 to 20 people are trickling in. It's some people from our family in the Eonites, it's some people from the media who are also our family. It's so wonderful to see everyone here. Get comfortable, be open to disengaging with everything going on outside, and we'll see you in about 10 or so, 15 or so minutes. Thanks all. how do we get to the new normal? My name is Adam Crane, and I am the advocacy lead with the Eon Foundation, the official CSR wing of the Eon Group. We are so thrilled to have you all with us today. I wish it were under more merry circumstances. After all, the pandemic has put us in a really interesting, anxious time where somehow it feels like we don't have enough time and we have all the time in the world at the same time. We also understand that you could have been doing a lot of other things, but you chose to be with us this afternoon, so we're very grateful for the time. The last time we checked, over 50 people had been tuning in, and that's a real blessing for all of us here. I do want to remind people of the flow of this afternoon. We'll have a few opening remarks, and then we'll get straight to the session, care of Miss Angie, our expert. And then we'll have a question and answer portion. But if at any point you want to react to anything any of us are saying, please feel free to comment in the comment section or to send a message to any of our media relations team, that is Sarah, Pao, Jem, Therese, or Joe. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to somebody who you're much more familiar with to give us a bit more about what to expect and what we can look forward to this afternoon. So, I bring you the head of Eon Public Relations, Ms. Jane Villa.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really so nervous to appear before you today, and yet so excited. This is the first time I'm appearing like this, medyo ayos, after 3 months. And as Adam mentioned, I'm really honored to have many of you join us this afternoon. The last time I had to speak to many of you was in the last Christmas party. And if I remember correctly, because our theme at that time was rock and roll, I kind of said something like we will rock 2020. And somehow it's 2020 that rocked us instead. So ewan ko lang ha. But I really thank you for joining us this afternoon. We have friends from Cebu and Davao as well. Thank you. During the time of ECQ and until today, we were thinking how Eon can be of help to many of us. What space can we fill? And we thought that as much as we can nourish the physical aspect, we also think that for the medium and long term, it's also important to nourish the mind and the spirit. So that's what we are bringing to you this afternoon. And before anything else, I would like to thank our media relations team, and I'd like to acknowledge them today. Therese, Pao, Jo, Sarah, and Jem. This afternoon is their brainchild, and they've been preparing in the last month to make this afternoon happen. So, shout out naman sa ating media relations team. In fact, they should be the ones appearing before you this afternoon. The thing is, they also are the ones who created the program, so naisahan ako. I was assigned to open the session today. Before I move the program back to Adam and Miss Angie, I would just like to say that this time is really for you, and we invite you to spend a few moments with us, check all your cares at the door, and have this time to care for ourselves. This afternoon is for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane, for the kind introduction. I completely, wholeheartedly agree that this time is for us, and in a moment like ours where there's so much going on at one point, what a gift it is that we can actually have time for us. But the reason we're all here is to learn how to really use this time for us in a way that sustains us with purpose and with life and with vigor. And so it gives me great pleasure to introduce an expert in the field of media relations, an expert in the field of the creative arts, an expert in the field of theology, and for the purposes of this afternoon, a professional coach who will teach us all about how to care for ourselves and one another, Miss Angie Ureta.
Thank you, Adam. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us in this webinar. Admittedly, this is my first, so this is a sign that you can still teach old dogs new tricks. And for those of you who are joining us, who have known me in my previous lifetime as a media practitioner, good afternoon, and this is my new normal, including the face shield. First time din yan. And speaking of firsts, it's also the first time that I actually stepped out of the comforts of Marikina. I live in Marikina, and I haven't been out more than like a kilometer away from my house. And I've always wondered during those days of the lockdown, what kind of world am I going to step into? Is it going to be like the same world that I left, that I closed my doors to? Um, sa amin kasi, it's very self-contained. No? It's funny because before all of this happened, I actually only came home to sleep, to sleep, to bathe, to change my clothes. I hardly even had meals at home. Parang uuwi ka lang talaga para matulog, magpalit, and then you're out again. And suddenly, in the last 100 and so days, every nook and cranny of my house has become familiar to me. Nag-try din ako mag-urban gardening kasi nainggit ako dun sa mga friends ko sa Facebook. So I was like wondering like, what can I do during this time? Kasi hindi ka sanay, di ba? And I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this. The first few weeks, parang vacation. Wow, ang sarap. Netflix binging, ganyan. Or binging, yung iba naman nag-hoard ng mga certificates, Coursera, Udemy, name it. And then, those who are interested in more domestic pursuits, naging mga amateur chefs, amateur bakers. Tapos nung lumalaon na, para na tayo nakakulong. So, sumikat na yung TikTok, may amateur dancers na rin, video until it came to such a point where, ano pa ba yung pwedeng gawin, di ba? What is this new normal that everybody's talking about? New normal ko ba yung mag-post ng video sa TikTok? New normal na ba yung magbigay ng mga free online classes? Paano naman tayo mabubuhay, no? Especially for those who are in the creative and performing arts. So many questions just rolled and snowballed until we came to a full stop, and it's become a boulder, no? Those pebbles of questions. Naging boulder na siya. And for a lot of people, it became a burden. The fact that things just got out of hand. And of course, for most of us in this generation, I think for all of us in this generation, it's the first time that we've actually experienced something like this. The pandemic of epic proportions. So how do we actually deal with something that we have no knowledge about? No? Hindi mo siya pwedeng i-research kasi hindi pa siya nangyari. So in today's session, what we'd really like to do is just to help you out. We're not here to answer every question you might have in mind. We won't even attempt to do that. Ang sabi nga ni Buddha, I am just the finger pointing at the moon. Okay? So that's what we really want to do this afternoon, is just to point you to certain directions that we could probably use, that's an option for you to deal with whatever situation you're having to deal with now. All right, so okay, we're experiencing some technical difficulties. I'll just give you back to Adam.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Miss Angie said, Miss Angie gave a very good introduction of what we can expect. And true to the form of COVID in the Philippines right now and worldwide, we have been tasked to become comfortable and react and adapt to ambiguity. And so what we're facing right now is technical difficulties, but these are not in any way unsolvable. There are a lot of issues that we've been going through that are quite solvable. I invite you all to please be patient, bear with us, and we'll commit to getting these fixed as soon as possible. For those who have tuned in to the YouTube channel, I believe it's working there, but for those who prefer the Facebook, please bear with us as we adjust. In the meantime, just to kind of share what it's been like on our end, Miss Anshi talked a lot about how we have to just experience this in our own way and find our own way of dealing and adapting. And I don't want to reveal too much of what she's going to go into when the time comes for the presentation. But it's been a tremendous life lesson, and I can understand that it's the same for myself, it's the same for Jane, who we heard from earlier, it's the same for Miss Angie, certainly, and it's the same for all of us. This was an epidemic thing that we could not have predicted. It came at us, and even though there was a bit of science to suggest something was coming, we didn't expect that the gravity was going to be like this. But to talk more about how to deal with gravity and make gravity work for us rather than against us, I'm thrilled to announce that, like I said, all problems are solvable with belief and strength and teamwork. So we are going back to Miss Angie for the presentation on how to get to this new normal. Thank you all so much for your patience, and I hope you're not yet sick of the sound of my voice, because now we're going to hear something different.
Okay, so we're back. For those of you who have heard the term Mercury retrograde, does that mean anything to you? Well, it just started today. And we're experiencing it live. Kasama yan sa new normal. May pandemic, may Mercury retrograde pa. Okay, so can we start already? Media in the time of pandemia. Maganda lang pakinggan, di ba, nagra-rhyme. So I was telling you earlier that this is the first time I actually left the safe and comfortable area of Marikina. And I just stepped out into a world that is not exactly like the one that I closed my doors to. Everything looked familiar, but they weren't exactly the same. And it's funny because I know that a lot of you can relate. No? For years, we've created our life's purpose around our jobs, our advocacies, our hobbies, the things that we're interested in, the things that we're good at, all those different activities that fill our daily lives. And then, things just came to a sudden pause. And for others, a full stop. We have worked so hard to come so far. But now, where are we going? So this afternoon, let's try to find our way forward together. So just 5 days ago, the Social Weather Station published the results of their recent survey. So it said that 9 out of 10 Filipinos are stressed by the COVID-19 crisis. Talaga? Hindi nga. Parang breaking news. Stress pala tayo. Yung pala yung tawag doon. Okay? So, well, anyway, seriously, this is something to be concerned about. 9 out of 10 are actually reporting stress. Out of these numbers, 55% admitted that they were undergoing great stress. 34% said they were going through much stress. And only 11% said they experienced little or no stress. Curious lang talaga ako, saan planeta sila nakatira. Gusto ko rin tumira doon. Gusto kong sumama doon sa 11% with little or no stress. The reality is that in the last 3 months, cases of anxiety and depression have increased globally. No big surprise, since life as we knew it had been disrupted. As I said earlier, in the beginning, parang vacation lang, no? Wow, this is a welcome break. But as the days went on, and you never really knew how much longer it was going to take, no? The vacation started to feel like a prison. Kasi hindi ka talaga makalabas, literally, for a lot of people. For some, they have to go out. And for our brothers and sisters in the media, that is the case. Alam mo naman yung trabaho natin. Pag lahat ng tao nasa loob ng bahay, kailangan tayo yung nasa labas, di ba? Otherwise, wala silang panonoorin sa TV, wala silang babasahin. So, you know, that's the nature of the job. Now, but really, being content, having very little or no stress, is definitely a privilege. So if you belong to that group of that 11%, palakpakan, and you should really be grateful. You know, during my active career as a media professional, I was mostly a producer and writer for news and current affairs for television programs. So I spent a lot of time in the 90s. I will date myself here. I spent a lot of time in the 90s writing about the armed conflict in Mindanao. Yan, naghahabol ng mga MNLF, MILF, gano'n. And I almost died twice on coverage. Ironically, it had nothing to do with the armed conflict. So one time, I fell off a cliff, and the other time, I almost fell in the middle of the sea, literally. So, kasama pa namin yung National Geographic team. Kaya nakakahiya, di ba, kung nahulog ako at namatay. Jahe. But, sabi nga nila, ubus na yung takot ko sa katawan. Living dangerously is the old normal for many media professionals, especially those who are in news and public affairs. Now, the American Psychological Association refers to journalists as vicarious frontliners during this time of pandemic. Why vicarious? Because while we are not directly responsible for attending to the sick and the dying, like the medical workers are, we are there, front and center, gathering stories, reporting, allowing the rest of the world to see what is going on through our eyes. So tayo yung mata ng balita. Because of this unique attribute of our work in media, many of us, especially those covering the news, may also experience a feeling of severe guilt, or what is called by the APA as a moral injury. You know, that feeling where after witnessing a terrible event, you realize you're not able to intervene. You're not able to do anything about it. And this feeling is not unique to the time of pandemic. I'm sure many of us, one time or the other, have felt that we have risked our lives for a situation that we were helpless to change, or that we have delivered messages that fell on deaf ears, or worse, messages that can get us into really big trouble. So if danger is already part of our reality, why are we so affected by the impacts of COVID-19? Ang sabi nga ng nasirang Senator Miriam, we eat bullets for breakfast. But these days, forget about the bullets. Mas delikado pang maubuhan. And this is what makes us feel powerless, anxious, and in a lot of ways, vulnerable. And that's a really tough feeling to face. Because how do we dodge a death-carrying missile that we cannot see? Parang yan yung situation natin ngayon. Next, please. So, as journalists, we are storytellers. Looking back at the last 100 and so days, at the impact of the lockdowns, we say the longest in the world, the health and safety issues and protocols, the rising cases, the rising numbers of deaths also, the political drama here and abroad, I mean, none of this are making us feel more secure or even optimistic. As we go about our daily lives, let's just take a moment and ask ourselves, what narrative are we creating for ourselves today? Never mind the stories that we write for other people, for their consumption, but let's look inwards and ask ourselves, What's my narrative? Is it a story of wisdom? Or is it a story of woe? Next, please. Yeah. Now, let us be clear. If you have been feeling a little all over the place, those are symptoms of stress. I mean, even I have been feeling that way a lot. They are not personal failures. They are not because of something you did wrong. They're pretty normal in average doses. I've been feeling this myself. No? Parang flaky, inconsistent, cloudy, confused, irritable. And there's a medical reason for this, but I don't have to bore you with all of the terms. Basically, what the studies have been saying is that our brain is just like almost running on empty. It's overheating. It's taking so much more energy and time to prepare for what's going to happen next because it has no idea. We don't know how to brace ourselves for the next news. You can't even plan ahead, let alone predict and control the outcomes. Everything is temporary. Every plan a placeholder, every deadline a moving target. The Mayo Clinic tells us that stress is a normal physical and psychological reaction to the demands of everyday life. So it's normal to feel a little more stressed during a crisis. But a prolonged exposure to crisis, which has multiple challenges, just like this COVID pandemic, can really push us beyond our ability to cope. So you can see on the screen some of those indicators: mood swings, emotional outbursts, trouble concentrating, changes in appetite, body aches and pains, not sleeping well. For some, they find it hard to sleep. For some, they find it hard to get up. No? Feeling more tired than usual, excessive enthusiasm, or extreme productivity. Naghahanap ka lagi ng gagawin. Forgetfulness, and then intense loneliness or isolation. Okay? And these are just like some of the telltale signs. Now, a lot of people may develop mental health concerns during this time, especially on the lines of anxiety and depression, while others who already are facing mental health issues can get all the more aggravated. Despite our best efforts, we may find ourselves feeling helpless, sad, angry, hopeless, anxious, afraid. When these signs and symptoms last for several days in a row, so we said normal naman yan, but if they last several days in a row, when they already make you feel miserable, when they cause problems in your daily life, when you find it really hard to just carry out what used to be ordinary and routinary tasks, then it's no longer typical or ordinary stress. So we have to be able to recognize what is typical and what is not. And when that happens, if you feel that you need to see a professional, please do so. And only you can determine that for yourself. On the other hand, there are also some things that you can do on your own to initiate an inner transformation, which will allow you to manage the stressful byproducts of living in a pandemic. And for this session, we will talk more about inner transformations. We will talk about how shifting our mindset can actually make us healthier. If we're talking about mental health, syempre, we talk about the mind. And if our minds can make us sick, then why can't we also use our minds to help us heal? Next, please. So if you are going through a personal crisis, especially if it involves mental health, the best thing you can do for the greater good, for the good of all, is to work on yourself. If you want the highest good, work on yourself first. Because when we level up our consciousness, then we can arrive at more creative solutions to help us with the problems that we are confronting. And that very old saying, di ba? You cannot give what you do not have. So, kung aligaga ka na, yun din ang ibibigay mo. Di ba? So, para kang live wire. Lahat kinoryente mo na. So, we have to go inwards and assess our own situation. Now, as a professional coach, I get asked a lot by clients in whatever situation they are in. How do I move forward? How do I get unstuck? We get unstuck first by recognizing where we are. You know, we are at a time where old ideas are being questioned, where old systems are just falling apart. Instead of simply mourning the loss of control, of predictability, of routine, all the things we have been used to, let's try to flip it around. Okay? At this very moment, there is also a great opportunity for something fresh to emerge. Okay? We can rewrite our personal story, but only if we proceed with an open mind and an open heart. So how can we turn crisis into an opportunity for growth? By our willingness to transform. And this transformation usually happens in stages. So this is how we rewrite our story. First, we cope. And that's what a lot of us have been doing in the last few weeks. We just try to make do with what we have. You try to make the best out of the situation. You just try to keep up. Keep body, mind, and soul intact. So we just cope. But after a while, we start to adapt. We come to a point where we have changed enough to survive and to grow within this new environment. So hindi ka na nagko-cope lang. Medyo okay na. No? Remember in our science classes, no? In the beginning of time, there was just water. So all the organisms were like water organisms. And then dry land began to appear. So all of these floating mechanisms had to adapt. So they grew legs. But they haven't really gone that far. They were just adapting. So they were just still little floating organisms that grew legs. So they weren't entirely new yet. But then, as time went on, and the more you try to adapt to your new environment, you start to evolve. And what does this mean for us? We develop qualities that are more appropriate to the new environment. The first time I went to Batanes, the first thing I noticed was, bakit yung mga carabaos nilang kakapal ng balahibo? Di ba? Macho lahat eh. Balbon lahat yung mga kalabaw. And then the trees are actually shorter, no? Parang mas robust. And then one of the old people that I had a conversation said to me, it's because, they've evolved. Ganun na sila. First they adapted to the climate, and then they evolved. So pag maliit yung tree, hindi nadadala ng bagyo. Pag makapal yung balahibo ng mga animals, hindi sila agad giniginaw or sinisipon. So, ganun din tayo. Kung kaya ng kalabaw at kaya ng puno, kaya din nating mag-evolve, di ba? In fact, we have been evolving for the last 600 million years. Diba? This is the story of the human race. So we are able to develop qualities that are more appropriate to our current realities. The objective is not just survive, but to thrive in this new environment. So this is the story of our lives. So why are we afraid of something we have been doing for the last 600 million years, which is evolving? It should be in our DNA. So my question to you right now is, where are you? In what stage are you in right now? Are you still in the coping stage? Are you in the adapting stage? Or are you already starting to evolve? If you identify yourself from any of these stages, then we can already start to move forward, start getting unstuck. Next, please. And one of my favorite insight meditation teachers, Sharon Salzberg, said, in order to do anything about the suffering of the world, we must have the strength to face it without turning away. Never mind the suffering of the world, our personal suffering. Sometimes it's even harder to face. So let's rephrase it. In order to do anything about our personal suffering, we must have the strength to face it without turning away, without distracting ourselves, without trying to look for something to do because we feel so uncomfortable. And this is the first step to getting unstuck. Next, please. Now, what keeps us stuck? There are a lot of factors that keep us stuck, but let's focus on something that is very prevalent and that often we just miss out on. Kasi iba yung values ng society. Okay. So, jump out of the ego trap. Okay? If we refuse to open our minds and our hearts to embrace change in whatever form, there is very little anyone can do for you. Yeah. I can't do anything. No one else could. Yeah. Because this is a personal decision and commitment that I deserve more in life, that I want a better quality of life. I cannot keep hankering for the one I left behind because it's no longer there. There's nowhere to go but forward. So if we live in this ego trap, it is actually a prison that we create for ourselves. Next, please. So ego is that false self which makes you believe that change is impossible, improbable, or at the very least uncomfortable, so we resist it. Ego is usually rooted in pride. Not wanting to fail, not wanting to make the wrong decision, not wanting to make the wrong choice, not wanting to go beyond our comfort zone because okay na tayo eh. We've settled with this. What's that saying? Na it's better to go with the familiar, with the familiar pain than the unfamiliar joy, something like that. No? So comfort zone, settling. It's usually ego. It's rooted in pride. If you don't want to move, kasi you don't want to fail. Okay, next, please. So ego does not like the uncertainty of a forward journey. It likes to pitch a tent and say, this is it. I'm comfortable. Okay na ako dito. And we feel that we're in control. We feel that, things are more predictable. But the reality is that living in the ego trap is very disempowering because it deprives us of the freedom of choice. All that ego wants is to cling. So there's so many choices, but we're afraid to choose otherwise, to choose something else, because all we want is to cling to whatever is already working. Or even if it's not working, whether it's a bad job, a bad relationship, okay na ako dito, sanay na ako. And that is what keeps us stuck. Next, please. So, the quick guide to this, or the quick answer, since we don't have the entire day to discuss more, is the importance of pause. Pause. Kagagaling lang natin sa 3 months na quarantine, community quarantine, lockdown. Pause na naman. Are you insane? Okay. Don't judge me. Hear me out here. So we were in lockdown. And they say it's the longest lockdown in the world, no? Just recently. And, for some of us, we're still working at home by choice or by circumstance. So, okay. But this is not exactly pausing. Yeah? Being at home does not necessarily mean that we made time for pause. For a lot of people, the first response to life as we know it now being disrupted, slowing down, grinding to a halt, is to immediately look for something to do. Sabi nga natin kanina, di ba? One of the signs of stress is to become overly productive, excessive productivity. You're just restless. Hello, we are in a pandemic, not a productivity contest. For those of you who found your inner talents and inner joys while in lockdown, good for you, palakpakan. No, really, I'm not even being sarcastic. I'm so happy that you had the time to tap into the inner baker, the inner chef, the inner carpenter, urban gardener, whatever that is, the inner TikTok dancer, whatever it is. No judgment here. But it's good, okay? But for those who spent days upon days just staring at the ceiling, staring at the wall, not even wanting to get up, take a shower, good for you too. Because you're still here. You didn't give up. And you allowed yourself time to just be. Okay. We don't lose our self-worth just because we're standing still. Something that the lockdown taught me is that doing doesn't bring us very far. Why? Because what happens when there's nothing else to do? And this is the importance of pause. To remind ourselves that we are human beings and not human doings. Just to be. And this is why we have to take a conscious step backwards and reclaim our power. Our true power lies not in being able to control all the moving parts of our given situation, but our power is in the ability not to be controlled by them. Ulitin natin. So, our true power does not lie in being able to control all the moving parts of our situation, but in our ability not to be controlled by them. To know deep inside that we can adapt, we can evolve, we can transform. So, yung pause, ginawan ko siya ng acronym. Sobrang old school, but just humor me. So that it's easier to remember. Nanonood ako ng mga webinars, gusto nilang ginagawa yan. Nainggit ako, kaya gumawa rin ako ng sarili ko. But I tried to choose words that are not so predictable so that it would be something unique also for you to remember. Okay? So let's see what PAUSE can mean for our mental health. Okay? P is for practice. By practice, we don't mean to rehearse something repeatedly, until you excel in it. But practice in a way that is mostly used in Buddhism. Basically, what we mean is that we practice what we do to live a happy and mindful life, whatever it is. Okay? What we do to live a happy and mindful life. In these very unsettling times, we need a practice. If you are a person of faith, maybe you'll find comfort in prayer or in community life. Just use your moral compass or your spiritual life for support. If you draw strength from a belief system, whatever that is, it can bring you comfort during these difficult times. And it helps us to just breathe. Some people think that, when you reflect or when you pause, you're just still, but your mind is still working. No, you can actually be moving, but totally focused. And that is still meditative. That is practice. For some, a spiritual practice could mean yoga or meditation. Others find meaning in journaling, blogging, being outdoors, communing with nature. Whatever it is that helps you be more aware, more optimistic, perhaps even more grateful despite the present circumstances, do more of that. So that's practice. Next, we allow. Suffering does not come from adverse circumstances. It comes from our resistance to them. Does this mean that we just take things as they come without any intention of improving or making things better? Of course not. It simply means that we don't let resistance drain up all our energy. Lahat na lang dun nakafocus sa gusto mong baguhin, sa ayaw mong mangyari. We use up all our energy just resisting change. We have nothing else. Running on empty. We don't obsess over escaping the situation. We don't deny or minimize the challenges. We simply allow it to run its course with full awareness of what is happening. Nakikita mo siya? It's like sitting by the bank of a river and just watching it flow. Nakikita mo siya. Okay? But you're not drained by the entire experience. You're able to step back. Sabi nga, if there's a solution to your problem, then just do it. If there's no solution to your problem, then what's the use of worrying? So, we allow. To allow is to have an alert presence of mind. And to let go of what we cannot control. That is allowing. Okay? To allow is also to free ourselves from our attachments to the patterns of thinking and behaving that only serve to perpetuate our suffering. Masakit na eh. Bitawan mo na. Diba? It's like, wearing ill-fitting shoes that you've outgrown 3-4 years ago. Diba? Bumili ka na ng bago. Kahit may sentimental value pa yan. It's hurting you. Time to step back. Okay? And allow. If you allow things to unfold, then you can make a clearer, better, more logical, more sensible decision about it. Your choices are clearer. Next. Uplift. P-A-U. Uplift na tayo. Okay. This needs very little explanation. We simply become happier when we realize that life is not all about us. The most miserable people are probably those who are so self-centered that everything is about them. Hindi naman siya yung pinag-uusapan. Ako yan. Wala naman siya kinalaman doon. Kasama ako. Everything is so personalized. No? Ego trap yan. Okay? Meanwhile, the ones who are more giving and encouraging, they seem to be the happiest if they do it for the right intentions. I mean, really, aren't we tired of living in a self-serving, self-centered, self-obsessed society, both real and virtual? A society that's so filled with negativity and constantly tearing each other down? Kakasawa na, di ba? So how about trying to focus on building up others for change? As the saying goes, we rise by lifting others. As human beings, we are wired to be compassionate and kind. And this is how we survive. This is how we evolved over time. Because we cared for each other. We don't leave our sick and our crippled and our injured behind, diba? To be eaten up by the big animals. It's the sense of living in community. And these are the qualities that we still need to survive as a human race, especially now. They say that there are many wonderful benefits to be gained from giving to others. And I think that the most important of this is happiness, our own. The happiness that we derive from lifting others up. And in relation to this, we go to serve. Do something for someone. Find purpose in helping those around you. Not just other people, not just other humans, but all living beings. Well, you also find people kasi who like dogs and cats more than other people. I think I'm one of them. But that's cool. No judgment here. You know, when I feed my 9 cats, I feel like I'm serving them. They don't care if I just came from work. They don't care if I'm tired. And it's a very humbling experience. It's actually a very edifying experience. Just to be able to connect with other living beings. When we serve others generously, we feel abundant. Diba? Kasi we're able to give of ourselves. And when we feel abundant, our souls grow. And we find joy in ourselves when we serve. So it's a gift that keeps on giving. And finally, sinususpend, expand. Ang Mercury retrograde, hindi matawaran. So E is for expand. Expand your mind, expand your talents, expand your reach, expand your heart, your understanding, even your waistline. It's okay. It's fine. It doesn't matter. Just don't shrink. Sometimes we just don't want to engage with life anymore. We feel we're too old to do new things, or too young to change old things. So we shrink. Please do not shrink. Do not shrink to fit. Shrink to fit is good for t-shirts and jeans, not for people. Move forward with a growth mindset. If everything is new, examine what is new. Find your way. Find your place. How can you be part of this? It's never too late, and you are never too old. So, we can learn new skills. We can see what skills are valuable in a changing work environment. If you're worried about your jobs, of being obsolete, time to learn something new. How can I be useful? How can I be of benefit to this new and exciting new world? Explore alternative lifestyles, the ones that are more appropriate to your situation, ones that are more appropriate to the times. Be curious. It all starts with being curious. Once you stop wondering, what if? Once you stop being curious about the world around you, about possibilities, that's when we stagnate. That's when we become stuck. Next, please. Yeah. Carolyn Myss, you've probably encountered her. She's a famous author and inspirational speaker. And I really love this quote. I've heard her say this in a TEDx talk, and I put it down in my notebook, and I want to share this with you. It's always inspired me. Be in the newness, not afraid of it. Be in the newness, not afraid of it. Doesn't it make you happy just to talk about, just to say it out loud? Diba? Parang sarap pakinggan. And this is the challenge that we can place on ourselves. How are we in the newness without running away in fear? Okay. Next, please. So, as I said earlier, if you need help, go out and get it. Okay? We can't expect mental health issues to just go away on their own, especially if it's not typical stress and anxiety anymore. they could lead to worsening symptoms or an actual issue, health issue. So if you have concerns or if you have experience of worsening mental health symptoms, ask a professional. Go and be upfront about how you're really feeling, how you're really doing. They're not there to judge you, they're there to help you. And now more than ever, people are so open already about dealing with their mental health problems. There is no shame in that. Believe me. I know. So, is the new normal really new? Yes and no. Yes, because it's our first time as a generation to experience this kind of epidemic, as I said earlier, an epidemic of epic proportions. But no, because change has always been a constant in the history of the human race. Humankind has coped, adapted, and evolved to all sorts of diseases, calamities, social unrest, economic crisis, war, pestilence, the Great Flood, if you believe in that, and all these factors that are bigger than us. And we're still here. We're still standing. It's just our turn to run with the ball. And so, as we conclude, I'd like to leave you with some 13th century wisdom from the Persian mystic and poet Rumi. And he says, from 700 years ago, the voice of Rumi advises us, try not to resist the changes that come your way. Instead, let life live through you. And do not worry that your life is turning upside down. How do you know that the side you are used to is better than the one to come? Let's remain open in our hearts and our minds and believe that we deserve a better quality of life if we commit ourselves to it. Thank you and be well.
Thank you very much, Miss Angie. It's always an insightful experience whenever we hear you present whatever it is you're presenting to us. I especially like learning about how important it is for all of us to strike a balance between things that we can do physically with our space or with our bodies or with the objects around us, as well as managing the things within us, our feelings, our emotions, the way that we interact with others. Before we proceed, I want to thank everyone again for their patience. This got off to a bit of a rocky start, but we are resilient people. We were born that way, we will die this way. I want to thank everyone on the back end for making sure that this event did not go down without a fight, and we're still here kicking. And I'm thankful to all of you that you are all still tuned in. Selfishly, I feel among my people because the chat boxes, whether on YouTube or in Facebook, are filled with hugotero at hugotera. We'll proceed now to the Q&A. I want to remind everyone about the format. If ever you have a question, please feel free to either comment it on the YouTube live feed or on the Facebook live feed, or if you're a little bit more shy, although based on the activity going on ngayon, parang wala namang shy dito, please feel free to message Pao, Sarah, Jem, Joe, or Therese, and they will get the questions to us and we will ask them. If ever I turn to the side and I'm no longer looking at Miss Angie, it's not because I no longer am interested in her company. It's because I'm looking at the questions that you're feeding to us right now. We have the gift of a question already from someone in attendance, and I'd like to give it over to you, Miss Angie. Someone asked a question, and as we were discussing earlier, it's the question. A lot of us here would want nothing more than to pause, to live out the acronym of pause, as well as to literally pause, to do nothing, to sit, to turn off the TV and not listen to the news. At the same time, we are the media. It is our bread and butter and it's our livelihood to be tuned in to everything that's going on, whether it's positive or not so positive. What advice or strategies do you have for people in the media to take a pause that honors the work that they are doing, but also honors who they are when they take the professional hats off?
Thank you for that wonderful question. No, but I'm coming from a space of experience. I get you. I understand what you're going through. I lived through that for many years. And I think this is where respecting that we are human beings takes precedence than what we are doing as humans. No? This is where it's important to step back. Just step back and breathe. You can't do everything all at the same time. And when you're already in a breaking point, it's useless to keep on pushing. So we need to really take that pause, literally. If you feel that you want to disengage, just do that. The world is not going to stop because you didn't watch the news for one night. No, really. Yun na nga, sometimes your ego makes us do things. Like, I have to be there. I have to be in every conversation. Fear of missing out. During my time, wala pang FOMO na term, no? Basta, andun ka lang. Kasi kailangan. Yeah. But it's killing you inside. Okay? So it's more important for you to care. Di ba? Caring for yourself is the beginning of a higher good. And you can't move forward. If you need a break from social media, if you need a break from work, take it. Just take it. You'll do everybody good.
Thanks so much for that. And we were actually discussing earlier, hindi ba, na as the media, we didn't avoid stress before COVID. The world was plenty frictional before the pandemic hit, and there will be plenty of unfortunate events when we get past COVID.
Oh, yeah.
So the advice that you've been giving us, it's very helpful, whether it's in this context or whether it's in any context we find ourselves in. The importance is to be mentally and physically and for some spiritually resilient.
Yes.
Another
definitely.
question that has been really popularly asked. A lot of us are going through this alone and are doing quite well, and a lot of us others have people that we have to take care of. Someone in the chat box mentioned they receive care from their jowa, sana all, hindi ba? And we have family members, so it's a lot of heads to worry about, a lot of mouths to feed, as the case may be. How do we balance our personal well-being, knowing we might have to also look after the mental being of our loved ones, whether this is biological family or logical family?
Or even just your office family,
Absolutely.
work family. Well, follow the advice of the safety procedures in a plane. In case of emergency, put on your oxygen mask first before putting on the mask of the child or whoever is beside you will be unable to do it. There's logic to that, diba? Because first, you have to make sure that you are in a place where you can help, that you have the headspace for it, that you have the strength and the energy for it. Otherwise, things can go down really bad for you and for the person that you're trying to help. Now, all of us have responsibilities. All of us have problems. All of us have challenges. And I think the thin line that really makes the difference is that awareness that I am not my problems. I have problems, but they are not me. Pag nawala ba yung problema, hindi na ikaw? We have to try and stop identifying with the phenomenon around us. If we're happy, I am my happiness. No, you're not your happiness. You just feel it. Diba? So, but no one's complaining if there's so much happiness, right? We only complain if we don't like what
such a
we're
problem,
feeling.
right? It's
Exactly.
people are too happy.
Exactly. Kung umulan ng pera, walang magrereklamo. Tinamaan ako ng pera. Mainit ulo ko. Di ba? So it's again, no? It's that ego trap na we're judging things as good or bad. But everything, in the end, everything will be resolved. Lahat may katapusan and then new things will happen. So just like, keep your composure and breathe. And when you take care of yourself, then you will come up with more creative solutions. How to make more money, how to fend for everyone. You had a second question that I actually like to latch on to because I feel that there would be questions about this. Like, what if a loved one or someone you cared about deeply is undergoing a mental health issue? but refuses to be helped.
Right.
Okay, maraming sa ating ganyan. You have to remember, especially if that person is already a full-grown adult, that you are not responsible for the health and happiness of another person.
Yes.
In the end, it is that person's choice whether he or she wants to move forward and to leave that situation. But because you care for them, there are also things that you can do. Kasi nga, if that person is already in the middle of a of a tornado of emotions and all that, it's very hard also for that person to make sound decisions. So what can you do? Very basic to this is you create a safe space for the person. No? A safe, open space. Just listen. Listen. Be extra patient. Do not judge. Do not try to translate what that is. So I think this is what you mean. No.
No, it's not helpful to anyone.
Yeah? Just listen. And don't minimize the experience. People who are undergoing a lot of anxiety really have a tendency to overblow situation. Parang sa'yo, sa kanya, big deal sa'yo. Parang, don't minimize the experience. Just create a safe space and build trust.
Sure.
So that you can encourage that. Sometimes just an open conversation does a lot. Don't make the person feel helpless. Ako lang makakatulong sa'yo. Or if you don't seek help, wala ka na. The objective is to empower the person
Right.
to face their whatever their challenges are and have the commitment and the strength to move forward.
Right.
You can also make subtle offers like, oh, you want, I can accompany you, I can sit outside, wait for you at the doctor's office. If you know that the person has some financial difficulty, so it's not a priority for that person, maybe you can sponsor it. I mean, it depends on how close you are and how much you really want to help. Or you can also talk to a mental health professional and then ask.
Sure.
From this point of view, what do you think is the best way to do it? But yeah, this is also a common question that I get asked a lot.
Sounds good. There are two questions that are kind of related because they're
Okay.
both going back to the individual and they're both about measurement. So the first question is, we've been talking a lot about the pause, the fabled pause. What do you think is considered a long enough healthy pause? And the other question kind of related to this and caring for the self is, at what point do you think we have hit our breaking point? We really we can't overstate, for example, as you said, if you really need help, please seek the help that you deserve. What are some tips or some clues that it's at the point where someone else might need to intervene?
Okay.
I'm sorry, those are two very heavy
Yeah, but
questions.
they're also very related.
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to answer the second question first.
Sure.
So how do you know that you have reached a breaking point? So one telltale sign is that you're just miserable. It's no longer a passing feeling. You're miserable every day for days on end. That's a breaking point. If you start acting irrationally, or just have certain develop patterns of behavior that are just like really different from what you're used to. Okay? So if it affects your daily life adversely and it persists, then that's a breaking point. Don't wait for a breakdown. Okay? And what's the other question again? Sorry.
The length of a pause. Is there such a thing as a too long pause, or you should have paused some more? Look at you, you're still struggling.
Strike a pause.
Yeah.
We can't really answer that. If you are under the care of a mental health professional, then your counselor or your psychiatrist will help you determine that. But if you're on a DIY, it has to be you have to come back to a point of balance. And that's how long it takes. You can't measure it. That's another demand that we put on ourselves. So, kailangan ko mag-pause, pero 3 days lang. Kailangan ko mag-therapy, pero 2 days lang. Paano ka gagaling? It's a process. No? But you have to determine, when am I back in that state of equilibrium? When am I happy again? And happy for days on end. Replace that misery. I hope that helped.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
People have continued to come in with their
All
comments and
right,
things like that.
good.
A lot of the other questions, the questions that have been coming in, they're actually very aligned with how to be good to ourselves in light of everything going on. So, to kind of synthesize a few of the questions that have been asked, a lot of things are going on in the news. How much of this is really our responsibility? How much of this is our cross to bear? Like these supposed threats to our ability to do our job. At what point? How much of this is our emotional stability? How much of this can we really fix?
Okay, again, this stems from the tendency to personalize everything. If we believe that we are our jobs, syempre, everything that affects our job affects us personally. When we say that we can step back from the things that we have to do for a living, from the things that we are passionate about, it doesn't mean that you don't care. It just means you're leaving space for yourself, not to be consumed by it. Yun na nga, di ba? We said earlier that if you put all your energy into resisting, into overthinking, then wala na. There's no more energy for anything else that is life-giving. So, I don't know like how people will react to this, but I always say, like, di ba merong old saying na, kung hindi mo naman gawin yan, hindi naman tataas yung presyo ng bigas bukas. Give yourself a break. Sometimes we love our work so much, we're so committed, but it also becomes an ego trap because we feel that, if we relax a little, everything will break apart, everything will fall apart. And I'm not telling you to be lazy. Right? There are no extremes here. I love surfing within the gray area. We put color into that area. Let's not go to extremes. What I'm saying is, know when enough is enough. Mm-hmm. Know how to give yourself quality time. Know how to give yourself quality family time. And these are decisions we have to make from day to day. We don't have to be the hero just in our jobs. Why can't we also be a hero at home? Why can't we also be a hero to ourselves? I always tell people, like, a 1-hour massage where you can just be quiet and have somebody does wonders for you. Really, literally.
Since we are a communications agency and we work with the media, I wanted to ask a question personally about how you feel about social media and whether you think it's made it easier or not so easier for people to get the help that they need. I personally, apparently I'm a millennial. I actually thought I was older. I've heard two different polls. I've heard people who lament social media for making us create an illusion of who we are, and I've heard other people who are celebrating that within the click of a within the press of a button on a phone or the click of a message, people can get instant care. How do you see the new technologies in the world helping or hindering our ability to love ourselves the way we deserve to be loved?
Media is media in whatever age. And in whatever age, it is a tool, it is an instrument, it is a channel, it is a platform. It's not our lives. Again, we make that distinction. I think sometimes our sense of self-worth is so low that we just associate it with something else. We can't see ourselves as being independent of the circumstances around us. So we become so dependent on the likes and we fret about the dislikes.
Yes.
And we want to please everybody with what we post, but it doesn't happen that way. As an instrument of communication, it's wonderful. Can you imagine this pandemic without social media? Like, I can't even talk to my mom or with my family from different parts of the country.
My parents are on an entire different
Right,
continent, and
right.
I'm still able to give live updates on everything that's happening here.
Exactly, and so it's made us actually closer. It's an instrument. The quality, the values that you get out of it, it all depends on the persons using it. So if you feel that a certain site or certain people are toxic to your health, just unfollow. The power is in our hands. No? We give it too much credit. let's not worry about the platforms. Let's worry about the people using the platforms, because the people make the platforms work. The values, the content. It's all about people. You want better social media? Mold better people. Mold thinking people.
We have a bit more time. If there's any last questions, please feel free to ask them. What do you think? Are there any misconceptions you think people have about mental health? On my end, the misconception I've been trying to debunk with my friends is that it's not important, and coincidentally, those who value it seem to be handling this moment a lot better than those who are dismissing it. But what do you see are the real misconceptions about mental health in a time like this, Ms. Ange?
For me, it's always been the shame. Some people just say it's not important because they're ashamed.
I had never thought of it that way.
It's the
I really
shame.
never thought of it that way.
It's a different kind of shame. Na parang, I'm not fit, to be in this company. People might think that I will not be able to complete my work. They might think I'm unreliable, and all of these stereotypes and all of this, false notions about people dealing with mental health. So it's shame and ignorance. I think that's really the issue. The ignorance leads to shaming. So I really hope that speaking about social media, there's so much material out there, in the internet. Let's educate ourselves. Let's educate ourselves, and let's find a way that works for us. Hindi naman siya one size fits all. There are different ways of approaching this, but it's really self-worth again. Also, I deserve this. I deserve a better life.
Oh, yes.
I deserve a happier life, and I'm going to work towards that without hurting the people around me. And in fact, I will be benefiting them. Diba?
Absolutely.
So that kind of mindset talaga.
Sure. And so it looks like we're on our final question, Miss Angie. We love talking about stuff like this, and the question always happens, inevitably, what happens next? So if you could give those who are watching from wherever they're watching from concrete tips, kahit isa, of one thing that they can do to better themselves as soon as they hit X on the browser or turn their phone off or leave the chat box.
For me, quick answer, prioritize self-care. Prioritize your own wellness. Prioritize your happiness. You deserve happiness. You deserve joy. You deserve to be esteemed as an important member of society, even if you're just staring at the wall for 2 days. In fact, today's currency is joy. It's no longer money or gold. It's joy, because it's so hard to come by.
Yes.
When you find what makes your heart sing, what makes you joyful, do more of that. As long as it's not a crime.
Right.
Diba?
I've been telling friends, if it's not hurting you and it's not hurting others and it's not hurting the economy,
Exactly.
do it. Go
Do
on.
more of it, because joy is really now the currency that we're trading in. It's so precious and it's so rare. It's hard to come by. Grab it.
Thank you, Miss Angie. Joy is a currency. That's a Miss Angie Ureta original. Huwag yung gamitin. I'd like to thank Miss Angie so much for
Thank
her
you,
time
Anna.
and her insights. And now to offer some concluding remarks is none other than the President, the Chief Operating Officer, and as of March 2020, the Chief Executive Chef of Ion, Mr. Richard Arboleda.
Hi everyone. Well, we haven't seen each other in a long time, and para na rin namin kasi kayong office mates for our PR team, our MR team, our events team, we do interact a lot on a regular basis through events, our small inuman sessions, or even our visits to your offices. And this has been the longest time that we haven't had any physical interaction with all of you. So really, this session that we put together for today is our attempt to reach out to all of you, our media friends, and we hope that this activity has helped you in one way or another. We know how stressful your jobs are. You cannot switch off. You cannot not monitor, and we know that you always have to be online 24/7. And that job, as Angie and Adam pointed out, is the essence of your being. But what is more important is that you protect yourselves, that you take care of yourselves, because if you do that to yourself, you have the ability to take care of the people around you and the audiences that look up to you. So, we hope to still do a lot more of these activities with you. Sana may physical na in the very near future, miss na ng MRT makipagharutan sa media friends. And we really do sincerely miss interacting with all of you. So if that opportunity presents itself and we can come together, we will make sure that we do it in a big way. But in the meantime, we have to make do with what we have, the situation that's around us, and come up with ways to interact with you that are new. And this is a prime example of interactions that are personal and yet still virtual. And we will be introducing more of these things as we go along, not just for Ion, but also for the clients that are under our care. So again, thank you for joining us this afternoon, and I also want to thank, of course, Angie and Adam for spearheading this conversation, our multimedia team for the fantastic graphics, and the cut to cut ng face to face. So thank you for being here. Of course, the PR team and the Engage Corpcom team, and most especially, of course, to the media relations team, Pau, Therese, Joe, Sarah, and Jem for everything that you do. So again, thank you for joining us this afternoon, and we hope to really see you soon.
Thank you, Richard, for the closing remarks. Just to wrap up everything, we can get through this and we will get through this. And so whether or not there is COVID, 1 year down the way, 2 years down the way, 5 years down the way, we will be beautiful, innovative, and resilient all at the same time. This is Adam Crane of the Ion Foundation signing off. Have a wonderful, safe afternoon and rest of the week. Thank you.